Because God has welcomed me to his table, I then need to welcome others to mine. And I have 17 reasons why we don't, because we can always think of reasons why we don't. But the whole idea is that because God is the ultimate host and he's welcomed you and I, Sherry, to his table, we are not just obligated, we are privileged to welcome another to our table. And maybe they will meet God at our table because we welcome them.
I am 𝗧𝗵𝗁𝗃, and this is your spiritual game plan, change. It's something that happens to all of us. You've invested your time and energy into an important role, sometimes for years, and then suddenly it's time for you to move on. Maybe you've worked hard on a dream, and now your path is taking a new turn, but that dream isn't going with you. Perhaps you've raised your kids and they've moved on, but now your empty nest is filled with parent care. Or maybe you're in the middle of diaper changes and laundry piles. If you find yourself asking questions like, where do I fit in anymore? Am I even relevant? How do I find my purpose now? You are in the right place. This is the show for women in a season of transition. I believe that while your roles in life will change, your purpose is eternal. I'm here to help you understand just how intentionally you were made by a creator with a game plan. Together, we'll discover ways to help you unlock the purpose God's placed in you, develop a game plan for your life's calling, and embrace the intentional masterpiece you were created to be. Have you ever had a mentor, or have you ever been a mentor? I know that having a mentor meant a lot to me when I was growing up, and I still have them in my lives. And I love nothing more than coming alongside someone to be a mentor. You don't have to go to seminary or have a degree to be a mentor. You just have to sit at the feet of Jesus on a regular basis. That is what my guest today, Sue Donaldson, is going to share. Sue Donaldson is not only a mentor, but she is what I call the hostess with the mostest. She loves to have people at her table, breaking bread and sharing the good news of God. Sue is a speaker and an author who lives with her husband, Mark, in San Luis Obispo, California. Sue taught high school English, part of the time in Brazil. She loves connecting people to one another, to God, and to his word, and has been speaking for the last 20 years or so about welcoming people into your home and showing the heart of God. Today, we're going to be talking about the importance of mentors and different ways that we can host, because coming together at a table and breaking bread is probably the best way that we can introduce the love of God to one another. So I hope that you'll be blessed today, not only by the message, but by Sue's wonderful enthusiasm. Sue, I am so honored that I get to talk to you across the states. How are you today?
I'm terrific. Thanks so much. And you're adorable.
I would love it if you would tell my listeners where you're living and a little bit about your ministry, your kids, and what God's using you to do in his ministry right now.
Thank you so much for having me. It's a delight. We live on the central coast of California, San Luis Obispo, which I'd never even visited before until I was visiting my then boyfriend. And I came off the freeway and I thought, wow, I could live here forever. And we have. It's been 34 years of marriage. We have 3 daughters who are adults, sort of, by age. No, they're great girl, all 3 daughters. And one is home visiting now. So that's always fun. And what else did you ask me? I got married late, 35. So it's kind of a miracle that I got married, much less my mother had given up, and then had 3 daughters. And my favorite thing to do is to speak to Christian women's events. It's just a blast for me. It's a gift. I remember I was vacuuming one day. That was before our wooden floors. And I just stopped the vacuum because I thought God was saying to me, not that I couldn't hear him over the vacuum, but I did stop the vacuum. And he said, Sue, I've made you a speaker. And I thought, okay, I guess I'll just accept that. It was kind of weird because, you don't want to like promote yourself or anything. So I didn't speak that much because I was raising kids. Oh, and I finished the vacuuming that day. But now I have a housekeeper because I have Social Security. But it's been a blessing. And so that's what I like to do. I like to speak to women, encourage them in their faith.
And you do a wonderful job.
Oh,
I know
thanks.
firsthand. So thank you. So you and I, as we're getting to know each other, we have lots of things in common, I'm finding out. And you love to host people in your home. And I myself love to have people in my home. And I even let people come in and have coffee amidst the chaos. And I read something that you wrote that I really liked. You said, here, let me move the newspapers. Oh, whoops, sorry about that sock. I have trouble with laundry. Here, please sit here in this room. We drank some tea, we drank some coffee. Now tell me what's happening and how is your heart? And the minute I read that, I was like, oh, that's, that you could invite someone into the reality of what, of your life as it is, and then ask them how their heart is. That was just so profound. And so is there a specific time that has stuck out with you when you did have coffee amidst the chaos and you knew that God was clearly there?
Well, there have been many times because God is so good. And I found that women, I still find that women are lonely at any age or stage. When I had small children, I read once, I think Dr. Dobson said that a mother of small children feels like she's on a desert island. And I felt like on that desert island because I was no longer in the workplace. Where do you find community? Somebody who can talk to you about anything, even diapers or not diapers. That would be really the best. So I invited young moms like myself that I would meet at the park or in the neighborhood. Someone drove by once and saw me watering the front yard, and she had 2 kids and had just moved into the neighborhood. And she backed up her car because they were new to the neighborhood. And I said, do you want to come in the house? Even though her son was trampling my garden, and I'm not much of a gardener, but it was a little annoying, but I didn't say anything. And they came in, and she was so impressed that I had brownies already made. And I said, well, I just eat brownies myself. It wasn't like for you because I didn't know you 5 minutes ago. But we then became, soul sisters for the next 10 years until they moved and helped raise each other's children. That's just one example. I remember I have a friend who's very organized. And I said, Debbie, my understairs closet is a disaster. Can you come over and help me organize it? Because I knew that kind of fed her soul to organize my life. And I said, and I'll feed you tuna because I knew she loved tuna. And one thing, I didn't know this, Sherry, we talked our way through like 4 different sets of monopolies that I didn't really need that much. We didn't need all those pieces. She organized all that for her, but she was depressed. She was down that day about her mom's illness. And so it was kind of like free counseling for her. I was a good listener and a good friend to her and fed her lunch. And then she fed me organization. And that's, someone asked me the other day on my hospitality Facebook page, they said, do you mean that we only do hospitality with non-believers? I go, oh, no, it all counts. Yes. We need to be sisters for each other, to encourage each other. And then also biblical hospitality means to invite the stranger. So to invite the stranger, whether or not they talk the same way you do, eat the same way you do, or, are in line with you in any way, shape, or form. If God wants you to invite them in, then you do it.
I love that aspect. I love the story of her backing up. That is so awesome. So here, I have a question I ask everyone because I love the answers. Looking back in your life, how far back can you see the very purpose you are living out today in who you have always been?
That was a very good question. And I'm glad you gave me a heads up on it because but it's interestingly enough, Sherry, I was just talking to my husband about it the other night because when I was little, I told everybody I wanted to have an orphanage. And my mother was so proud of me. I remember her saying, tell these women, like her women Bible study friends, tell them what you want to do, Sue. Like she thought I was like the cat's meow. Well, she usually did. But I said, oh, well, I want to have an orphanage. Well, then later when I got into college, I thought, I don't like children who are shorter than myself. So when I became a teacher, I became a high school teacher and people go, oh, wow, that's so scary. I go, oh, no, It's scary if they're younger, and because you work with high school kids. And I loved it. So, and because I was single till I was 35, I adopted a lot of those kids because I was cheerleader sponsor and I would travel with them. I took them to writers conferences because I was an English teacher. And it was so fulfilling. And then later, when I finally miraculously got married and had children, we started taking in international students as a part-time job for me. We had a 4-bedroom house and we could rent out the guest bedroom. And so my kids, from the time they were in my middle child is almost 30. When she was 2, we had our first Japanese student, and they would, the agencies would pay us. And so that was a job for me because I would feed them and drive them places. But our kids then were raised with international students, and then their parents loved us because we were, a fairly normal home and safe. And so, and then now with my kids being older and even through high school, their friends would come over a lot because I made brownies. I mean, there you go. Right. So I told Mark the other night, I feel like God has made us extra parents to people. I meet women, even my age, who were not parented well, or maybe a young woman who's 30 or 35. And I find out that they were in a toxic home. And so we're not perfect, Sherry, by any means, but we love the Lord and we love them. And my husband's a doctor, so he'll check their stitches, or he'll change the oil in their car, and I feed them. So I think it makes me kind of cry, because I think, God, you've given me an orphanage, and yet I don't really have to put them to bed every night. So that's nice too.
I love that. It's like you have this dream and God's like, I know, because it's who I made you to be, but I'm going to make it even better than you imagined.
It is better, much better.
Yeah, I love that side of God. So we've been talking a little bit before we hit record. So we established that we both like to host, and we're both Enneagram 7s.
Oh boy.
And then
go on forever.
Yeah, exactly. Another area that we share a similar passion is in mentoring. And I have had several people tell me, oh, I could never mentor, but yet we are called to mentor. We're called by God to mentor. And so it just looks different for each of us. And some may mentor one person, or we may mentor many, but either way, God needs us to be that connection to others for him. And so you do a lot of mentoring, as we'll continue to talk about. So why do you mentor, and what makes a good mentor?
Well, back in the day, it used to be called discipling. And I remember one day I was feeling a little bored, and maybe that's because I'm a 7. And the Lord gave me an idea because I was teaching high school. I thought I really love, I taught freshmen, but by the time they became juniors, they were more like your friends, and not so bratty. And so I was close to some of these gals, and I asked I asked 3 gals. I said, would you like to start meeting with me after school one day a week? And I didn't know what I was doing, but what I was doing was discipling or mentoring. And I just made it up as I went along, and they loved it. They loved the attention. I taught them. I said, let's grow in these areas. What areas do you want to grow in? Spiritual, academic, relational, what's going on with your siblings or your parents or your boyfriends. And then after 3 months, then I said, okay, you pray about a freshman girl for you to meet with. And then they started for 3 months meeting with a freshman, even though they're very young in their spiritual life, just because they were only 16 or 17 years old. And some of those gals are still friends with me on Facebook, or I speak at their churches. And it's such a delight. I was so happy. I remember going, Lord, I will teach high school the rest of my life if I can disciple girls. And it was just such a blessing. Well, that was a long time ago when I didn't know what I was doing. And I had a mentor myself who was delightful. And so I can't remember your question.
No, you just answered it. It was great. Okay. So, we think that when we think of mentoring, it can sound intimidating.
Sure.
I think because we think, well, are we having to have wise counsel sessions, and we have to sit and have wise words? But no, it's just meeting with them, listening to them. I love how you got them to then meet together and carry on. And I think, a good mentor is someone then that gives the steps and shows someone else how they can mentor others. And so,
and even work themselves out of a job, which goes to the point of how you coach women about how when we change roles, we lose our identity. That's happened to me. And then I think, well, why didn't they ask me to be the director of women's ministries when we lost one? I go, oh, they see me in this regard, and God has this other thing for me. And so to work ourselves out of a job, even I remember a parent calling me once and saying, would you please call my daughter in because she needs help in this area? She was a helicopter mom, but now that I'm a mother, I think we all are. And I said, well, I'm not married and I don't have children of my own. And she said, yes, but she likes you. So she'll listen to you. And so since I've had my own children, I continue to pray that God will bring them godly women, that they will hear the truth and the voice and the coaching of God's voice in a way that they won't listen to me just because I'm their mother. I mean, we have a good relationship, but I can go too far. I've complained to my friends that God gave me the gift of exhortation, but I'm not allowed to use it on my own family. And that's okay because it teaches me trust in him.
Yes. Oh, yes. I have that prayer. I literally pray, God, every morning, put someone in my kids' path that says what they need to hear today. And it's so true because they'll come home sometimes and be like, Mom, you know what I read or you know what I heard? And I'm thinking, I have said that so
a zillion times.
Yes. Or, I did do some substitute teaching and Bible classes on the campus that they attended, and they could attend a class I taught. And then months later, they'll be like, oh, I heard so-and-so say this one quote. And I'm like, that was my quote.
Yeah, we have to kind of get over ourselves, don't we?
Yes, we have to get over ourselves.
You mentioned, why are women afraid to mentor? I think it's because we feel like we have to know something that we know we don't. But when I speak on this, because I have a 4-part series on it, I say, look around the room. Well, don't look too closely, but there are people in this room who are a little bit further behind you. And there are people in this room who are a little bit further ahead of you. And the older I get, there'll be fewer of those, just because they're going to die. But God has blessed me with wonderful 95-year-old women and 85-year-old women who I call upon and I say, I need prayer for this, or what would you do in this instance? And actually my real mentor I've had for 25 years is only a few years older, but she's so wise. She had her kids like in her early 20s. I wasn't even dating. And I just texted her yesterday. I said, I need help with this. What do you say? And it's such a blessing.
That is, and God needs us to do that. Is that the Titus woman that the older
Titus 2?
Yeah, he needs those women to mentor, and he needs me to admit that I need it, that I need their wise counsel and to turn to it. And so it's just a wonderful cycle that God gave us. And it's like you mentioned something about God pouring into you on a regular basis. And if he's not, you have to ask why. But I like that visual of God pouring into us, because God's pouring into us, but if we don't turn and pour into others, then there's really no room for him to continue pouring.
That's very profound. Lives. Yeah, that's very profound. I haven't heard of it I haven't thought of it that way. And that shows how bright you are to figure that out. And I just figure like I have really nothing worth giving you as a person or your audience or my child who's home visiting right now, unless I'm sitting at Jesus' feet, because it's an overflow. I heard a speaker years ago say that ministry is spillage. And what he meant was, if we're so filled up with God, like it says in Ephesians 3:19, to be filled with all the fullness of God. I pray that day, Lord, fill me up with all of yourself. Why? Well, I should be saying it because I want him, but I'm saying it because it will flow over. And if nothing is, I get a little excited about this topic, but if nothing is flowing over, there is something that's filled up in here that's not God. Or what's flowing over is my complaining to my husband. Oh, well, we don't have this and you need to redo the yard and blah, blah, blah. This remodel's been going on for 13 years. I'm tired of it. If that's what's filling up my heart, that's what will spill out. And so I say that if it's kind of like a teacup, if a bunch of kids walk in the room and they hit your teacup and it spills over, what's going to spill out? Is it going to be Jesus? Is it going to be Jesus? Well, not unless I'm filled up with him.
Yeah, I like that. I love that visual a lot. So you have a book called Table Mentoring. And I love that concept because it brings both the invitation to the table and mentoring together, which is another area that I love to have people all around my table. And you bring it together so it's not so intimidating. And so are there ways that people can, get people around the table? I know you wrote down something about 2 Corinthians 1, where we can come alongside each other. And so God can come alongside us.
Well, 𝗀, that every painful experience that we go through is never wasted by God. And I don't like pain. I don't think we're supposed to ask for pain. We're not self-flagellists where we just go and say, oh, I want to suffer for Jesus. But when trials come, because they will, that's a promise of Jesus. Trials will come. And so we shouldn't be so surprised, but of course I always am. And with our trials, then we reach out to God. The older we get with God, the more we reach out to him quicker. I always say that's sort of a meter or a measure of how spiritual or how mature we are is how fast we run to his lap. And so we all need to do that. But when we do that, we find out who he really is, right? That's how Elijah found out who he really was when he was in trouble. And so when we're in trouble, even though we're maybe be too sad to thank him for it, we can thank him. That's why James says we welcome trials. Why? I would never welcome trials. That's in the Phillips. But we welcome trials. Why? Because that's when we beg God for wisdom and then we find his wisdom. So going back to coming alongside in Corinthians, when we experience God's comfort, that's when we can give someone else comfort. Yesterday, there was someone on my porch going through a situation I've not had to go through, very, very hard, a divorce. So how can I come alongside someone who a trial that you haven't experienced? Well, what you do is listen and ask questions. And if God gives you wisdom, give it to him. But later I just thought, you know what? She's a believer. I just said, this is what I just read in scripture. What we do is we draw people to who God is. I'm fully convinced that if we all had a more accurate view of ourselves, of who we really are, you talk a lot about identity, so do I, and an accurate view of God, that most of today's problems would be mitigated.
Yeah.
Know who you are and know who you're dealing with. So I said, look, God is either going to give you the money for this situation or he's going to give you an answer in another way. Why? Not because of you, because of who God is. So a mentor is someone comes alongside, shares how God's comforted you, and then sort of revert their eyes to God. It's kind of like we're putting God's reputation on the line.
Oh, I like that.
But he can handle it.
Yeah, I really like that. Putting God's reputation. It's like we share stories to show God's credibility. It's like we want a plumber, we're going to ask friends, like, who do you recommend? And they're going to say, well, this guy's got great credentials. And so when we're doing this and we're showing this aspect of God, it's like, hey, he's got the credentials. Here's what he's done for me.
Yeah,
so
that's great.
Yeah,
that's a great thing. It reminds me, I was sitting on the porch a lot this last year because of COVID. And this one girlfriend said a plumber's truck went by and she goes, don't use that plumber. And I thought, okay. And I go, well, I don't because my husband fixes everything. And she goes, I wish my husband fixed everything, but that's another story.
Yeah. Yep, that plumber did not have credibility.
It did not have credibility.
No. So I have a few very close friends in my life that I also consider mentors. These people can be very honest. We can be honest with each other and we can speak truth into each other. And then we can turn around and go see a movie or take a run or do some other activities together that aren't always in a mentor's role. But what are some, we've talked a little bit about it, but what is the mentor's role in someone's life?
Well, I think we've sort of touched on it in that Well, there's just different ways to mentor. What you said is a more casual, informal mentoring, which I also do. And my personality lends itself to it. I have found that I can't be tied to meetings on the same day every week unless, the only thing I do regularly is read the Bible and eat. And so I think God allows for different ways to mentor. When I teach on it, I say to start with 3 months, because then you can gracefully get out of the situation. Either she may say, this is not fitting well with my personality, or it's not really what I wanted, or I don't have the time. And same with you. I have mistakenly asked the wrong person to mentor me, and I've had to gracefully back out of it. So I say, start with 3 months. I've had women say, can we meet? And I'll say, I'll meet one time and find out what your needs are. And then I think I'm offering the mentoring worksheets to all your listeners today.
Oh, awesome.
Yeah, they're in that worksheet I sent you. Yeah, you get them free if you buy the book, but I'm not selling my book. I'm just saying you get the 10 worksheets. They're in my shop for $3.99. But if your listeners want them, in those worksheets are just practical what to say the first time you meet,
that's good.
How to set goals, how to lead a Bible study. Maybe you go, well, a mentor is about the Bible and I can't get past Genesis. I get lost in Leviticus. Don't worry, you won't be teaching Leviticus, though it was my favorite book in college, but that's, that was a professor teaching it. And so it has very practical things. So, what we need to do is we need to be filled with the Spirit. And then these little worksheets are just to make you feel empowered, and you probably won't need them after the first time you meet. I met with women and they go, you know what, I had this disagreement with my husband. What can I do about it? And I'll just say, we'll talk about this once a month until you feel like you've had a breakthrough. And then that's not ongoing necessarily.
Yeah, I like that.
Help?
No, that helps a lot. Because I think, I know, we've talked about this too a little bit. People have asked if I coach. And I've always felt like, well, I'm not certified. I didn't go to school. I didn't for coaching, but I do coach. And I think we make it so hard because we think we have to have all these answers and everything aligned. And, but it's just, like you said, making it simple, just meeting, listening to what their need is, assessing if it's something that you really have the bandwidth to do, and having a way out that gives us safety.
Right.
For everyone.
And also we can't meet everybody's problems.
No.
And especially when your kids are little. I mean, I remember this gal wanted me to mentor her, and I was very pregnant with my second, and she would be late. And so it's like, that was my nap time. And so we kind of struggled that way. But I also said, once this baby comes, our time will be over. And she was fine with that. She was delightful. But knowing there was an end in sight was helpful to me as the mentor.
Yeah, that is huge. So as we wrap up our time, I love how you mentioned that we have to stay at the feet of Jesus. And I would love for you to share a little bit of what is it lately that you've learned while you're at his feet?
Oh gosh, I think I had something in mind when you asked me that, but what I have learned even yesterday, I was reading the passage where Jesus said, I'm to be about my Father's business. And sorry, it makes me a little weepy too. I just thought, that's our calling.
Yeah.
And that was Jesus really talking back to his mom, which, And so when yesterday, I had these two unusual meetups, one on my porch and one at my table, I thought, okay, because I'd prayed that, it really solidified that was my Father's business. Besides all the other things, finishing the laundry, making a company dinner, getting ready for my daughter to come home, and meeting with my coach, and writing a blog. I mean, there were all those other things. Yeah. But those two unusual meetups with these gals, I thought, okay, I love it when God confirms something that he's taught you in the morning when you're half awake with your first cup of coffee, because then you remember it. Yeah. So I thought, I think I want to write a book called I'm About My Father's Business. I thought, oh no, I'm too tired and I have too many things to do. But I just thought it was such a great way to live.
I love that. To go about my Father's business. thank you for leaving us with that, because that is what we are called to do, is go about our Father's business. And like you mentioned, we will have links to the handouts and other ways that people can find you. What is your main website? I love its title, but I want you to say it.
It's welcomeheart.com. And can I just explain why it's that?
Yes.
My very first retreat series that I was asked to do, it was before my youngest was born, and she's 25. So it was a long time ago, and I was scared spitless. But the church asked me, we don't care what you speak on, but one of the talks has to be on hospitality, because they'd heard me speak on that. And I go, oh, okay, well, that's easy, because I knew how to do that. So I wrote a whole series about the welcoming heart of God. And so the first 3 talks, retreats, usually 4 talks, were on at different aspects of God's welcome. And then the 4th one was on, because God has welcomed me to his table, I then need to welcome others to mine. And I have 17 reasons why we don't, because we can always think of reasons why we don't. But the whole idea is that because God is the ultimate host and he's welcomed you and I, Sherry, to his table, we are not just obligated, we are privileged to welcome another to our table. And maybe they will meet God at our table because we welcome them.
I just love that. That just reaches my heart. And I know it will, anyone listening to this will feel like they're welcome. We just need to show up at your house and have some brownies.
There we go. And you can help me fold the laundry too.
Oh.
Oh, you don't want to do that.
Thank you so much for taking the time to bless me today and for blessing my listeners.
Thank you so much. It's been a joy.
I hope you enjoyed my time with Sue today. I love the concept of table mentoring because it brings both the invitation to the table and mentoring together in a way that is not so intimidating. Ways to connect with Sue, find out about her free Facebook group, and purchase the book, as long as some of the great recipes that Sue has will be links in the show notes. During today's podcast, did a friend or family member come to mind who you thought would enjoy the message? Then please share it with them. You can simply share the link or forward my email with them with a message like, "Hey, I thought of you while I was listening to this podcast. I thought you would enjoy listening to it, and here's why." Listeners like you sharing links with others is how this podcast can reach more people. Thank you so much for tuning in to Your Spiritual Game Plan, the podcast that helps you understand that God has a plan and you have a purpose in it.